Hey everybody, so today I'm here to share with you guys my April wrap up as far as the books that I read. I read 6 books in April, 2, 4, 6, yes, 6 books. And I've been noticing a lot. Obviously I'm a little late to the game. It's well into May now. But I did notice when I was watching a lot of these at the end of April, a lot of people were apologizing or like trying to excuse why they read so few books. And it's like, I'm not gonna do that. Like I told you guys, there's gonna be some months where maybe I read 1 book, maybe I read none, maybe I read 12. Like there's just a fluctuation. I think that's completely normal. You know, you try different things, you get in different moods. It's all right. There's no competition. So yeah, I read 6 books in April, and I did try something this month that I realized really wasn't for me. And right off the bat, that was reading multiple books at once. So I did start like 2 book clubs this month, and we have book club picks, and along with that I was just trying to read multiple books at once, even just of my own, and it was not working for me. I just felt like never pulled towards one book, so I never felt the urge to finish any of them. I didn't feel inclined to read them or anything like that. So I just realized reading multiple books at once is not for me. Now I will say I have a pretty good routine now that I have a handle on my book club reads and what I personally want to read in my TBR. And what I do is after the book club discussions, which they both fall on different days each week, after that discussion, whether that night or the next day, I read whatever is required for the next week. And I just get that right out of the way. That way it's still fresh on my mind. The conversation makes me eager to want to go back to the book and, you know, makes me all excited again. And I get it done. And that way the rest of the week I have whatever I want to read. And that has been working really, really well for me. So I'm technically still reading multiple books at once, but it doesn't really feel that way, and it definitely doesn't feel as chaotic. I know there's plenty of people who love reading multiple books at once, an ebook, a physical one, an audio one. I just cannot handle all of that going on at once. It just kind of discourages me more than anything. And I don't know if there's any books that I DNF'd. I'm going to go back and I'm going to look on my Instagram. Okay, so there was 2, technically 3 books that I DNF'd, and I'll just put them on the screen. The first one was The Long Weekend. This was a thriller that I highly anticipated. It was about a group of wives who are supposed to take a group trip with their husbands, so like a couple's trip. The wives are the first people at this location. They find a note that basically by the end of the weekend, one of their husbands will be dead. Honestly, it sounds really intriguing, but I just could not with the way this was written. It was not my style. It was not my thing. It wasn't getting to the point quick enough for me. So I DNF'd it. Wasn't having fun. Wasn't a good time. So that one was pretty short-lived. The one that I tried to stick it out and read was Cultish, because I was very interested in this. This is about explaining what we consider cults, the word cults, some kind of things that aren't cults but can feel like it, things like that. And I thought it was a very interesting book. It is nonfiction, and I picked it up from my library. Well, I picked both these previous books up from my library, but I was really looking forward to it. However, I could not with the writing style. The author was constantly breaking away from the narrative and being like, we'll get to this later, we'll come back to this. And while I could understand if it was a very important part, okay, thanks for the heads up, but it was constant and it was a lot. And there was also things regularly at the bottom of the page where it was like, if there's this many anecdotes, why not just put them where you're like wanting to anecdote that at, you know? It just didn't, it felt like I was all over the place and I couldn't really get a comprehensive idea of like what she was trying to say, what was important in the moment, what we would come back to later. I also think she left quite a few things out that would be super interesting. There was just like a couple of things that I just didn't really enjoy, a couple of avenues that I felt like she definitely could have gone down and just didn't explore whatsoever. And I really tried to stick it out, but the writing style just was not for me. I could not do it. It was an interesting topic. I just wanted her to get to the point, and it felt like we were never getting there. So I DNF'd it, and a lot of other people I had in my messages saying they felt the same way. It just wasn't written the way that we were hoping it was, and it just kept taking us out of the moment of the information she was providing. And the third one, technically the third one that I DNF'd, but it's because I plan to come back to it, and that's Dead Silence. So this was a horror book, highly anticipated, really looking forward to this one as well. I did get it from my library, but It is about a ship out at space that this space crew comes across, and you know, they come in there and obviously things are not how they're supposed to be, and there's monsters, and it's almost like a haunted house story but out in space. Sounds super interesting to me, and people have been loving this book. I haven't heard anything but good things, but it definitely has its own lingo because we are in outer space and there's just things that they're talking about. It requires a bit more attention, I guess is what I'm trying to say, and I want to be able to give it that attention. So I started it and I realized that's what was going on, and I just had so many other things that I just kind of needed not that book right now. So I don't know if I'll come back to it later. I was thinking about October, but my October TBR is quickly piling up with things of that month that I want to read. But I'm not sure. I'm definitely going to come back to this one. So I didn't DNF it forever. It's just more of a come back later. So that just brings me into the books that I actually did read. The first one being The Return, and I loved this book. It is about a best friend who goes missing for 2 years. On the anniversary of her disappearance, shows right back up right where she went missing from. So she went missing on her front porch, and 2 years later, that's exactly where she shows up. And she has no explanation of where she's been, what she's been through. She has no recollection whatsoever. She seems to be perfectly normal. She wants to be right back into her old life. And obviously that makes everybody kind of uneasy. Most of the people in her life are torn between being grateful that she's here and just wanting to follow her lead and just going right back into life with her, and the other one's being torn of where did you go? What happened to you? We want to actually help you, not just brush past this. So it was a very interesting story. It is a horror book. At first I was thinking it was more thrillerish, but it definitely does have horror aspects. So I think the horror genre is a good one to identify this one with. It definitely sets up an ambiance, and it's super creepy for a really long time before it gets just kind of downright scary. And that is because the best friends, the group of best friends, decide to take a kind of staycation at this hotel, and they all meet there. No partners, no anything else there, just the friends. And there's 4 of them, and they have different rooms. Strange things start happening. You kind of get where we're going with this. I love this book. I felt like it did a really great job with the ambiance. Super, super creeped out, and really just enjoyed this book. I wouldn't say it's like the best horror book I've ever read, but if you're looking for something fun, a little bit of new horror kind of meshed with like classic horror, I think this is a great mashup, because while it does have that like my best friend went missing and now she's back, but it doesn't really feel like it's her kind of vibe. It also I don't want to give too much away, but the ending, let's put it that way, the ending has a more new school feel to it. So really enjoyed this book. I believe I gave it 5 stars. I just need to pull up my Goodreads when I do these videos so I know what I gave them. I gave it 4 stars based off the fact that some of the descriptions towards the end started to get a little bit cheesy, a little bit more, you know, kind of Hollywood type horror vibes. I think it is a very good entry-level horror book, so that's why I gave it 4 stars. It wasn't like amazing top tier, but it definitely was fun, and I would recommend it if you're into the genre or looking to start to get into the genre. And the next book that I read was the horror book club that I'm in. The pick of that month was the, I'm not even going to try to pronounce this because I know I'll butcher that second one, but it's this book, and I believe it's on Kindle Unlimited, or at least it was when we read it, and it is about a man who had recently lost his wife, and he decides to take a camping trip with a couple of buddies, and obviously as they're on this mountain, strange things start to happen. And it is supposed to be a horror book, and I felt like I was reading multiple different books. I gave this book a 3-star. It definitely wasn't bad or horrible or anything like that. It just felt kind of like the author was forgetting what they were writing at some points and kind of starting over and starting fresh in some chapters. But I don't know. I feel like if we would have stuck with the ambiance that like the first third of the book had set, I would have been really into it. It's very ominous, very creepy, very you don't have all the puzzle pieces, we're going to slowly give them to you kind of vibes. And obviously with things like losing somebody and grief, and also the wilderness, and definitely being out in the mountains and stuff like that can add a whole creepy vibe as well. But the middle started getting away from me. I was very confused. I didn't feel like it fit the first third of the book. And then the ending was just kind of like, yes, that was an option, but did it have to be? So I didn't love the ending. I don't think anybody in our book club actually really liked the ending, the consensus that I was getting from, but we all kind of just felt like this book was a little all over the place. So it wasn't the best read, but definitely not bad by any means. And then the next book that I read was Exodus, and I read this on our little staycation that Mark and I took in April. This is the second book in the Ravenhood series. I talked about Flock last month, which is what got me started, and this is the second book in the series, like I said. So I enjoyed this book. Now, a lot of people told me I was going to ugly cry and that I was going to be emotionally distraught, and I was emotionally distraught, but I did not cry. It definitely is sad. It's in the ending, in my opinion, the very ending was a lot sadder, in my opinion, than what people were alluding to. I'll leave it at that because I don't want to spoil anything. I just don't know how to put this. It's kind of tough, but I really enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong. Like you can see from my tabs, still thoroughly enjoyed this book, and definitely still a heated romance book, but I'm here more for the plot than I am for that at this point. And I think that's the reason why I felt so conflicted. If you start this book, you're going to know immediately what I'm talking about. It still has all the same characters except a couple new ones are introduced. I finished Flock feeling like I didn't have the information that I really wanted, and this book definitely gave me more, and I feel in a better spot with the storyline and understanding it. So I'm eager, but also not eager to read the last book, Exodus, or not Exodus, The Finish Line. I'm holding Exodus. The Finish Line is the third book, and it's not the final one because I do believe the author has said that she's writing another one, but I don't know when that will come out. So The Finish Line will be the last book that I will currently be able to read of this series. So that's the reason why I haven't dived into it yet. I don't know if I'm quite ready to just take a break from this series. It's still definitely something that sits in my mind, and I have enjoyed it. I just don't know that I enjoyed Exodus as much as what everyone told me I would, but I'm hoping that The Finish Line is a little bit better. I do believe I still gave this 5 stars. I did. It was still a very good time reading it. I still really like it. I still like the series. It's just, I think it's also normal to not agree with everything that's going on in the book, and also wonder if you wouldn't have had a different course of action. And then the next book I read was my book club read. So we have a book club server on Discord where we pick a book every month, and we are having different genres. We follow a sequence of genres. So we start off with thriller, then romance, then YA, then horror. And then we just repeat and we go back after we go through those. And the very first month was thriller, and we picked They Never Learn. So each month we have a few options. We vote, and we decided on They Never Learn. And this is a book about a professor who murders men who are in YouTube monetization friendly guidelines. Not good people at all. Scum of the earth, if you will. And then there's also a point of view from a student who goes to the same campus. It's a little bit different of a storyline. Obviously, it's more about her friends and her roommate and things going on within, being a student at the college. It all builds up to this one really big kill for the professor, and things just don't go the way that they typically do for her because she has been doing this for years. And it's just kind of this story about female rage, basically. And I think I was the oddball out for our book club because there was quite a few people who felt like it was an okay book, but it wasn't anything amazing. And I definitely agree there were parts of this book that I wish we would have got a bit more depth on, specifically the relationships, whether they were friendships, partnerships, whatever. I just felt like it was lacking a little bit in the background or the depth of these relationships, like really understanding the dynamics of it and feeling like it was genuine. Because, you could say this person is my friend, but if I don't ever see any evidence of that in the book, I don't feel like you're actually really close friends. So definitely agree with some of the complaints that it just didn't go deep enough sometimes. Definitely would have liked to see more from this, but I learned with this book that female rage is something that I enjoy reading about, and I thought this was an awesome book. It definitely pulls you in from the first line. The first line in this is, "I'll know it's working when he starts to scream." So immediately I'm like, what'd you say? Okay, tuning in. And I actually bought this used off of Amazon because I wanted the hardback cover. Wasn't sure if I was going to like it though, so I bought it for a little less expensive on Amazon for the hardback, and it actually came from someone else's library, which I absolutely love, and I think it's so cute. And I like that they had put their start and finish dates in here, and that there is profanity in it, so heads up. It was a Goodreads giveaway win, which is really interesting, and it came from Mary's library, so thank you, Mary. It's going to stay in my library because I thoroughly enjoyed it. I did give it 5 stars. I heard a lot of people say this had dark academia vibes. I'm not sure I picked up on that. Maybe I have the wrong idea of what dark academia is. I don't know if that just means like sinister things going on within the education system. If that's what it is, then yes, definitely this is dark academia. But I thought there was more of a mood, more than it was like actions, and I didn't get that mood. It definitely just felt like a normal college campus in the United States of America where a lot of things are not taken seriously, and some vigilante justice, basically. So, yes, was really happy with this pick, and I rated it 5 stars, like I said, and I thought it was a good time. The next to last book that I read is Insomnia. This was a thriller that I was really, really looking forward to. Got it from my library, and I think, honestly, because it's been sticking with me a little bit, I think I'm going to buy it, and I think it's going to come to my collection at home because of how much I enjoyed it. So this is definitely a thriller, but honestly, guys, it's pretty creepy. By no means is it scary or frightening or anything like that, but it definitely has a real creepy vibe to it. And I just really enjoyed this way more than I thought I would. The whole premise is that this woman is turning 40. She's very distraught over it because she starts to show signs of insomnia and other things like her mother had when she turned 40, and you realize pretty quickly that her mother had a downward spiral as soon as she hit that age, and there were some really dark and sinister things that went on in her childhood, especially around her mother's birthday, her 40th birthday. And so there's just this fear that she has around turning this age. She also has a sister. This was just a lot more than what I thought it was going to be, because, you know, that synopsis alone doesn't really pull me in. Someone being afraid of becoming their mother, well, it definitely can be a good storyline. It's just not something like super original, you know, so I kind of wrote it off a little bit in my mind, but it pleasantly surprised me. Definitely a 5 star. I liked the twists and turns in this. I did not see quite a few of them coming. I heard a couple of complaints saying that the ending was a little over the top, but personally, I didn't feel that way. You know, most thrillers I go into with the expectations that this is not going to be realistic. This is not something that normally happens. This is not something that I would see in the newspaper if I picked it up tomorrow. I just kind of write that expectation out of my head, and I feel like I have a far better time reading thrillers than some people do. If you go in expecting them to be realistic, I feel like a lot of the time you're going to be let down, because I feel like most thrillers are over the top. So, and that's kind of why I like them. They teeter that edge of being unrealistic, but not all the way into fantasy, if you will. So I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I really, really like it. I really recommend it. The very last book that I read in April was this book of poetry that I actually bought for my best friend's birthday. It's called Winter Roses After Fall, and I bought this at Target. My best friend loves poetry. It was her birthday, so what I did is I bought it, I read it, and I annotated it for her. So I just tabbed different poems that made me think of her or reminded me of her or that I wanted her to read, things like that. So I read this, and I felt like it was a pretty good poetry book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I definitely preferred the first half to the second half, but the second half is just obviously in a different place than I am. I definitely think there's going to be people who resonate with that second half. It just personally wasn't for me, and I liked the writing style in the first half a bit better. So yeah, all around, it was a pretty solid poetry book. Not the best, not the worst, so you know, is what it is. But my best friend loved it and she loved that gift. Really simple and easy one. Obviously, it's far easier to do something like that with poetry books than maybe like, you know, a 400-page novel. But if you have the time and willing to do it, I think it's a really cute idea for someone to read a book and to annotate that for you. That is just such a thoughtful, time-consuming, and just kind of like intimate type of gift. So yeah, those were all the books that I read in the month of April. I had a pretty good time. Like I said, I was trying out some new stuff. I definitely found some books that I liked and that I didn't like. And I'm really getting eager for the second half of the year. Like I said, I'm already thinking of stuff like in October, and I am very eager for that month because I have some really creepy things that I want to read. And if we made it to the end of the video, why don't we go ahead and put the teacup emoji down in the comments for Insomnia, because if you read that one, then you'll understand that emoji choice. But yes, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, and as always, thanks for watching.